Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from the lovely regions of 6, 5, and 4, some parts of 4 where you're seeing us. Welcome again to the Alliance for Change, Alliance on the Move program. We're glad that you can take the time out to join us so that we can bring you some tropical and topical information. First, I want to say I hope everyone had a great Mashramani, and I know it out this weekend. Last weekend, that's in Georgetown. This weekend, it's Mashramani in Linden. So if any of you are in the area, please do go and join the Mashramani celebrations with our colleagues from Region 10. I'm joined today with none other than Dr. Vince Adams, an executive of the Alliance for Change, an expert in the oil and gas field, having worked in the industry for over 4 decades, I would say. Vince, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, David, and welcome to our wonderful audience or listeners. Glad. I know we've been gone for a little bit, but definitely glad to be back.
Yes, we've been absent for a couple of weeks. Just for an update, we will be back on regular schedule going forward. Had some administrative issues which we resolved. But let's jump right into it, Vince. The last week there was the much vaunted the 5th annual oil and gas conference. As you could recall, the oil and gas conference was started by the APNUAFC coalition in 2018, and we held it twice, 2018 and 2019. At that time, it was open for all Guyanese and investors. It was showcased for the country under the format in which we had it. But that has not been the case since the PPP has taken over the helm. Your comments on the oil and gas sector, which was supposed to be a showcase for the country's budding oil and gas industry. Vince?
Hey, thanks, David. Well, of course, we saw a lot of glitz and 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 spectacle every single day at the conference, and of course the parties at nights, the fetting and whining and dining. But here is the reality, and I was there was an article, there was a letter, and I was looking for something for how could you describe this conference, and there was a letter by a Guyanese by the name of Hemdat Kumar recently. And here is how Hemdat Kumar described this conference. He said, this conference was a shrine to greed disguised as progress, and a government that sells a global illusion while hiding local decay. They were the masters of narratives and merchants of vanity. And I could not find anything. Let me repeat that again.
Strong description there, Vince.
I could not. When I read it, I couldn't believe. It takes a special person to come up to be able to put those words together. He said, "A shrine to greed disguised as progress, and a government that sells a global illusion while hiding local decay. They were the masters of narrative and the merchants of vanity." Even outside of oil, you couldn't find a better description for this government than this guy. And as far as I know, he's not a politician because he writes a lot of articles, but he's very balanced. And but so here's my take. Then this is supposed to be a one Guyana conference. We had at this conference, and I looked at the program, there were close to 100 speakers, David, and our audience. It included 20 ministers and senior government officials. As a matter of fact, there were 12 ministers, and of course, the senior government officials. There were 50 foreign speakers who participated in this conference. So there were no Guyanese really, except for the government officials. No Guyanese. No members of the opposition were even invited, and the opposition, of course, we know, earned close to 50% of the votes, but they were not supposed to be part of this conference, which was titled, by the way, "Building Tomorrow's Future Today." So here it is. Look at the people who are building tomorrow's future. Had nothing
One
to do with it.
one side of the coin.
That's exactly correct.
So
And as
so
far as
this
I know, the constitution, the opposition is part of that constitutional government. But however, they were, they were excluded. Not only that, in these type of conferences, the University of Guyana, I did not see a single representative from the University of Guyana, our premier learning institution. And one of the main aspect of these type of conference is to make sure that you have people there who can learn about what's going on in Guyana, especially in such a new industry. So the only people who are there, these 12 ministers. And I recall, David, and you probably remember it, and this is not something that was not brought to their attention. You recall a few years ago, we brought it to their attention in our AFC conference, that no opposition, they were not inviting any opposition members to this conference. And did you recall what they
Yeah, I
came
can
out and
check that
said?
out. There's no one to invite. There's
No,
nobody
no, no,
that
no.
knows anything but oil and gas.
That's right. They said that there wasn't anybody qualified in the opposition to be invited to this conference. Well, I want the opposition, and not the opposition, I want the government to say which one of those 12 ministers are qualified more than anybody else in the opposition or anybody else in any part of the country that weren't there. Now,
So
and it
before
didn't.
you go there, Vince, let me ask.
Mm,
Let's put this here into perspective for our viewers.
yep.
The importance of a country, does not as a government, to sell a unified position on oil and gas. I want the viewers to know that yes, the PPP are in power at the moment, but if you go through our history, once again, I mean, there's a period in time when the PNC, on the colonial days, they had the PPP, they were in charge of the country and the sugar and those things like that in all industry. The PNC, and then the PPP, AFC, now the PPP again. The idea is that these are the forums where you develop your long-term programs so that persons, investors, Guyanese can see what is our vision going forward. This is not because obviously what you don't want as a country is that, say, the next general elections, another party goes in and they do a 180-degree you turn on the direction in which the oil and gas is going. So, I mean, and as a person who would have served under different administrations in the United States, speak to us about the long-term goal of having a stable policy direction for oil and gas or for any industry, the importance of that for a country.
Oh, and oil and gas, as we know it, especially in Guyana, when you look at what oil and gas is, what does it mean to the nation of Guyana? And let's reflect, let's go back to when we were in government, David. What was our budget at one time? 200 something
Yeah, 300 billion, I
billion.
think, or
Yeah.
yes,
No, true. Well, I put it in US, about 300 million, 200 million US dollars. Now it's about 5 billion. So
yeah.
we're looking at a totally different country that is moving rapidly. So that's the value of oil and gas, especially in Guyana. At least in the United States, we're more diverse. We're a more diverse economy. We're a much more developed country. But even these conferences in the United States are very important. Even the United States might surprise people. Even in the United States, one of our big emphasis is to attract foreign direct investment. In the United States, believe it, I think we've got like 12% of our economy is driven by foreign direct investment. So this is one of the things that we have to make sure in Guyana, for example, and especially since we're not, we don't know a whole lot about oil and gas. So what the government should be putting emphasis on is to educate the people. This conference should have been free to the public, David, so that because People want to know what the heck is going on. The only thing that they're getting here are the pack of lies, the pack of lies that they're being fed, the propaganda from this government that everything is going fine. But nobody knows where the money is disappearing to. Did you increasing from, listen to what you remember what our budget was, I know what it is, and we still have 58%, meaning close to 6% of every Guyanese. 6% of every Guyanese are still living in poverty, David, in this
Yes.
country that is supposed to have so much. And then we for this conference, where that's why I say it should have been free. The ordinary person, if the ordinary Guyanese wanted to attend this conference, and I know that many would have loved to have attended. Do you know what was the fee that they had to pay, David? 89,000 Guyana dollars. That's almost their entire. How much did we get for the? Was it 100,000 that we got for the cash grant? Almost their entire cash grant.
And
The
exactly,
one-time cash grant would be gone. That's what they had to pay. So this year was
yeah.
completely, it was intended to lock them out. The small businesses, David, the small businesses in Guyana, you know what the fee that they had to pay? It's about $1 million in fee to have a little booth at that conference. And then, of course, you got to pay hotel. It's about $1 to $2 million again. So how the heck could they attend? So this year was a deliberate intent to lock it up, lock them out. And then when you look at the attendance, when you look at the attendees, it was all foreigners. Nothing is wrong with bringing in competent foreigners. But here's the most egregious thing here, David, and our audience. So even those few people who could have afforded to get into the conference, in the panel sessions, David, and in the general sessions, they were not allowed to ask questions.
Yep.
They
So,
were not allowed to ask
you just
questions.
pay $8,000 to $9,000 for a photo op.
That's right,
somebody to
for
take
a
a
photo
photo of
op,
you.
and
Yes.
but imagine here's what's so well, it would have been laughable had it not been so serious. Guess how they arranged it, how they orchestrated it. You know who were asking the questions? The panel members themselves were asking each other the questions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
It's an
most
echo
ridiculous
chamber.
thing. So they've cut out. So they don't want people's opinion. They don't want people's opinion or for the world, because the world is looking for the world to hear the issues that we are having in running
Surrounding the
this
oil and
industry,
gas
except
industry.
for their pack of propaganda, how everything is beautiful, and that's what this conference was about. That's all it was about.
Right, Vince, how you go? Thanks very much, Vince. We're now joined by our young YFC executive, Adeli Roach. Adeli, welcome. Thank you for coming to lighten up the age difference and the gender difference.
Hey,
and
speak
the
for
looks.
yourself, Dave. Speak for yourself here. Right?
Yes, well, yeah, there you go. Speaking for myself here. So welcome, ideally. We were just having some comments on the oil and gas issue on the conference is going on. But tell me something, ideally, as a representative of the youths of Guyana, which myself and Vince can claim to be no longer. We're youthful in mind and thought, but not in age. The conference, you mean, as a young person, did you think that you gained or you learned anything from what was on 2 weeks ago? Adeli?
As David, thank you for the question. Thank you for allowing me. I'm going to speak from me and from what I would have heard among my peers. This conference, especially this year and last year, it came and it went so fast that we didn't even know when it was scheduled, as opposed to when APNU AFC was in government and we had the conference. It was more of an anticipated event, something that more persons look forward to. This year, I only knew the event was going on when I saw it on Facebook. A lot of the young people were not invited. You had to pay. A lot of entrepreneurs, small business people, same thing. They are not connected to this event anymore. This event seems as though it's an event for the elites, for persons who have connections with either government officials or persons who work in the oil and gas sector. So it feels as though it's not for the mayor or the normal or the ordinary Guyanese citizen. I can't tell you anything that go on besides that I heard some form of youth chamber was formed or created. Who are the members? I don't know. How it was created, I'm not sure. What is the structure? Nothing of that nature. I have never heard the speech of several of the ministers, and these are things that are important, or these are things I consider important. That's how the media is actually taking it, because a lot of people that you expect to carry this event didn't, or they only carried sections of it. And it shows that only not only Guyanese are detached, but also the media, the private medias, weren't even interested in the event as they would normally. So you only had information like from the regular person's sheriff news media and newsroom. I didn't even see much from NCN, which is a shame because they're also a state-owned media, and that says a lot about how the event was advertised, how it was organized, and the people that it reached. So yeah, definitely agree with Vince when it comes to the point that this should have been an event open to the public, and it should have been open to more than we expected. I hope that next year it's free.
Yes, well, there you go. We could always hope, you know what I mean? Vince, we'll come back to oil and gas because we have several other things. But
Yeah.
Adeli is here. Adeli, another recent event that is, well, it's still on, just concluded, which we, speaking about globalization and unity, which is the CARICOM Heads of Government conference. It's an annual conference where our heads of all the CARICOM countries get together and try to make decisions for the betterment of CARICOM. This year, it is somewhat fractured and there's somewhat of a divide on the backdrop of the issues that Venezuela is facing. And I know as a young person that you will be following it. I'll follow up with Vince because Vince would know can tell you the benefits of CARICOM not only in sports but in our economy and those things like that. So Adeli, the CARICOM heads a government mission that just concluded. Your perspective.
Thank you, David. I was actually following that meeting very keenly. It had a beautiful team that I was held on this year, Beyond Words, Action Today for a Striving Sustainable CARICOM. One of the things that is important to young people is ensuring that CARICOM is sustained and that we have that regional connection that you guys would have had when CARICOM was formed. So right but now, I noticed there were a major fracture between the leaders or the heads of government at this meeting, especially when it comes not only to the Venezuelan issue, but also to the issue as it pertains to the U.S. relationship with Cuba. A lot of CARICOM leaders would have stayed away from commenting on that issue, included Guyana. We had some persons who would have commented directly on that issue, which would have been the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And then we had same thing for Jamaica. Jamaican Prime Minister would have commented on that issue, showing his support somewhat behind Cuba as opposed to what the Trinidadian Prime Minister would have done. But the team that the meeting was held on, though, I hope that they actually hold that team and it's just not mere words because that's a very strong team beyond words. We would like to know, young people, we would like to know that our leaders not only just spend a lot of money to attend that meeting, but when they go there, those conversations transmit to actions, and those actions actually strengthen CARICOM and doesn't further divide and don't further divide us. Right now, it's not looking too good as it pertains to the Trinidadian aspect, but as it pertains to the other CARICOM nations, it seems as though we're all united. Um, in terms of food security, regional integration, and so on. But when it comes to the issues of outsiders, like the Venezuelan issue and the issue with Cuba, most persons are being reserved, and we all know for what reason. But as it pertains to Guyana and Venezuela issue, I noted throughout the CARICOM and the heads of government, everyone would have thrown their support behind Guyana, stating that they respect our sovereignty and our border, our territorial issues when it comes to Venezuela. And that's one thing we must say that we appreciate and we are proud of that to know that our Caribbean countries are backing us in that aspect. But I myself will not really comment on the Cuban issue. I would like to see how the Caribbean leaders uh, negotiate and navigate that issue there, and hopefully it comes down to a decision where it benefits not only CARICOM, but it benefits the region and it benefits all parties involved.
Thank you very much, Adeli. So, I mean, and it's a pity, you know, I mean, that it seems for us as Guyanese, I mean, we have benefited tremendously from being part of CARICOM prior to the advent of oil and gas. I'm sure everybody in this viewing here would have had a friend, a family, a neighbor who would have, during times when things were not, even though they're not bounty now, but the opportunities were less in Guyana, would have gone over to a Caribbean island to either teach or exercise their trade or whatever. So at the time when the region been supposed to be on the rise, I mean, there's oil in Guyana, there is oil next in another 2 years, it'll be going to be coming out of Suriname. So as well as, you know, I mean, other areas. I mean, I think Trinidad is going to get another deal with the Venezuelan gas plant. That time when we should be, things are looking up internally, that we should be more united, not forgetting where we came from. So Vince, your thoughts on where we can go and CARICOM unity?
Well, I don't think I could say it any better than Ayodele. And I love to hear it when it comes from this younger generation. But there is even a history going back, and David, you might not even be young enough to know about the West Indian Federation.
Yes, I've heard about it. I've heard about it.
I've read
No,
about it
yeah,
too.
I know you have to stick that in there, but nevertheless, so here it was supposed to be a West Indian Federation, and what that meant was a one government for the entire Caribbean area. So that's the history. So it's not a case where this here goes. And remember, most of what we were talking about, we were all part of that British Empire. So that West Indian Federation, of course, it didn't really materialize. So that formed the foundation of where we started coming together. Then, of course, look at the one thing that survived all of this here when you start talking about unit is cricket. Cricket, we have a West Indies cricket team, and right now we're playing in the World Cup, and we all celebrate. But this whole thing, this unity didn't start now. As of course, we always had our little gripes and stuff like that among each other. But if you recall, during Venezuela's claim just a few years ago, we started having a split. You remember?
Yes, yes.
Gonzalez,
Ralph Gonzalez,
Motley, and all of them. You know, they were going in the. You know, of course, they had Maduro and them were their friends, and you know, I'm not saying that they were supporting Venezuela in the issue, but they were kind of speaking from both sides of their mouth, etc. So that split started there, and now of course we have the Venezuelan issue with the U.S. getting involved, and of course nobody wants to go against the United States of America. So a lot of people now are keeping quiet, but we still should not forget the good that Cuba did for the entire Caribbean in terms of providing medical care, and we and other things that
support.
we are provided
Yes.
with from Cuba.
Educational, they give us scholarships. We have a lot
Scholarships,
of
that's right. A lot of our
Cuban
medical
trained
people
doctors, yeah,
were not only medical folks, people were trained in
engineering.
engineering and everything in Cuba. Now, what we should do is come together as CARICOM, that is, and you always got to give and take in geopolitics, and say, well, okay, let this here is the CARICOM's position, and there's always going to be compromise, and sit with the U.S. as a group with one,
One voice.
one voice, consistent voice, and I guarantee you the U.S. understands diplomacy, and they themselves would compromise and say, well, okay, this is what you want, but no. What is happening is that we're so divided, and the easiest thing the worst thing that can happen to any country or any organization is to have people who are divided. That means you're weak, and there's, you're not going to progress, or you're not going to, especially when to have an organization where there's this unity is one thing, but to have countries within a region that have such as CARICOM, it's very dangerous, and it's not beneficial to the people living in these territories, because they're the ones who are going to be impacted. So of course, for whatever it's worth, my suggestion would be for them to come together, as not in the presence of the U.S., because they took everybody walked into that meeting with their position to make a decision as to where they're going to go. That should have been decided before with one voice, and they walk in and
Communicated,
negotiate with the
yes,
U.S. government
communicate
to
to
say,
the
well,
world.
okay, here are the compromises. For example, we've got a lot of people punishing in Cuba. That's a human problem. With people who are starving and everything else. That should go beyond. That should transcend the politics. We're dealing with people here suffering. How do we deal with that? And try to get America on board, push the politics aside, but make sure that we take care of the people who are suffering. America did well, at least that's the intent. When they went into Cuba, when America went into Cuba, it was to alleviate the suffering of the people. That was what was said. Well, the people of Cuba are also suffering. I'm not saying advocating that America should go in and militarily take
Forcefully.
over, but there's a human aspect here that everybody should work beyond these divisiveness, and but it doesn't look good right now for CARICOM. It does not look good right now for CARICOM.
Well, I want to put this in perspective just before we come off this topic, particularly for the persons in region 5 and 6. We've always said it out that we're going to diversify our economy. We've always said it out Guyana can be the food basket for the Caribbean, whereby with our great potential for agriculture, the government made a claim which they've gone back on by 25, which is that 25% of our of the Caribbean's produce should come from within the Caribbean. I mean, and Guyana leading the way. That has not been borne fruit. But in diversifying our economy, CARICOM is our natural market. It's a protected market because obviously that within CARICOM, ladies and gentlemen, you can sell your produce with very little taxes and tariffs. Unfortunately, and then one of the issues that we've always been saying in Alliance Chain, we have to diversify our economy. I mean, if the sugar industry is survive, our market would have to be CARICOM. If the rice industry, our first market would have to be CARICOM. So it doesn't argue well, not that we are fighting among ourselves, because it opens the door for other persons to come in. You know what I mean? So therefore, I mean that if rice is not protected in the CARICOM fair, I mean the Uncle Brendan rice and the Guyanese rice would be the same at the same price. So it has implications other than just the geopolitics of Venezuela, Cuba, and America. And I do think it's all that we as a country and as a people have to take these into considerations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we move on, I wanted to bring a topic which I think is dear to my heart. It's dear to Berbician's heart. It's a question of the Berbice Bridge. So last year, August, the government of Guyana, and rightfully so and thankfully so, made toll-free travel on all bridges, not only the Berbice bridges, on the Demerara Bridge, on the Wisma Bridge, as well as the Berbice Bridge. And what that meant is simply, ladies and gentlemen, is that instead of you pay the money, the taxpayers, the money came out of the consolidated fund. Now, we've heard in the last budget debate, Vince and I, Delhi, that not only are the government paying the tolls for the citizens, which we like and we support, they're now considering buying out the bridge. And that seems like, I mean, on the face of it, that would normally seem like the natural thing to do instead of continue paying these persons, divide them out. But here's the backbone, Vincent, Ideli, and people in Berbice. In 2006, this government built the Berbice Bridge and what they call a public-private partnership, whereby private sector persons were supposed to put in their money along with some public sector persons, and it's supposed to be run as a business. But that was all a farce and a con. A group of business persons put in, Vince, and I tell you, they put in actually nothing more than 180 million US dollars. I think that's what they put in. The bulk of the money to build the Berbice Bridge came from the NIS. Under this agreement, this company was allowed to collect tolls as they were doing up to last year, charge the traveling public, and they were allowed to do that for 21 years. So the agreement between the government of Guyana and the Berbice Bridge comes to end in June of next year. This bridge was built for 40 million US dollars back in, and it opened in 2008, 2009. Since 2008 to now, the Berbice Bridge, based on the last calculations that were done, in revenue, Vince, would have collected over 120 million US dollars in revenue. Almost 3 times the amount of money that they would have spent to build the bridge. They were supposed to do several things: maintain the bridge, renovate it, and those things like that. Up to 2020, when we left, they had done absolutely no renovation. They just collect the money and said and claimed that they were not making any profits. When we came in 2015, one of our campaign promises was to reduce the toll on the bridge. It's a campaign promise. When we went to the Berbice Bridge to say, listen to me, as a government, we like to subsidize the toll, they refused. They refused to accept our subsidies. They said that they are a private company and they can't, and they don't need to take any, they don't want to take any money from government, even the subsidies. We're saying we're paying on behalf of the person, the citizens, and they refused. They only agreed to accept the subsidies after we introduced the Berbiceans would know a river taxi, a free river taxi for students and teachers, and so we introduced it between Rossignol and New Amsterdam. And when they saw that their revenues started to drop because everybody used the free services, then they agreed to take the subsidy from the government. Fast forward to November 2018, about a week before the local government elections, they made a big announcement that they're going to raise the tolls by 400%. Because after making all this money, they claimed that they were not making back their profit fast enough. We, of course, as former minister, I took them to court and I issued a public order administratively taking over the bridge and forcing them not to increase the toll. PFP comes back in now, a year away from the expiration of the contract. And at the expiration of the contract, they are supposed to give this bridge back to the people of Guyana, free of cost. Now, the PPP are in negotiations. After this company would have made 3 times the money that they invested, 3 or 4 times, are going to buy the bridge for about $6 billion, which is 30 million US. Scandal, it's a sweetheart deal. I mean, the major shareholder is Bobby Ramroop, who is reported to be the best friend of Bharat Jagdeo. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do a corrupt practice. $40 million you paid for it. You've collected 120 million US dollars in tolls. No maintenance. I don't know what it did since 2020 to 2005. Did no maintenance in it on the building, and then you are going to get back money at the end of the by the government, and they set out they concluded by the end of the first quarter. Nowhere else in the world, Vince, can somebody do this? A company could do this for with taxpayers' money and get away with it. I mean, your comments?
No, absolutely. Well, of course, nobody knows that anything with the bridge and infrastructure kind of better than you do, and we're lucky to have somebody like yourself who knows the history and the details of it, because these are the kinds of things that the government will go and peddle the lies to and try to fool the public. So we're happy that you. But David, we know what this is about. Is to put money in the pockets of their friends and families. As a matter of fact, I should say more money in the pocket, because as you just illustrated, money was already in their friends and pocket in their friends and families'
and
pockets, plenty of it, tens
yes,
of millions of dollars. However, through greed again, and they don't care damn thing about how it impacts the taxpayers, because this is money that is coming out. It's not only going into their friends and families' pockets; it's coming out of the
for the
pockets of the
taxpayers.
Guyanese, the poor Guyanese people, that including that 58% of people who are living in poverty. So they're getting big, fat, and happy and rich, while the 58%, they're bleeding them to keep them big, fat, and happy. They're bleeding this 58%. Who heaven help us, we might be getting to 70% here in the near future if
I,
this continues. But
I
no,
really,
you're absolutely correct, David. This here is all about greed and corruption.
I really,
I'm actually doing the math in my head. If the contract
sweetheart
is
deal, isn't
expiring,
it? Huh?
if the contract is expiring next year, June, why are we still buying the bridge if we're
We
gonna get it
just simply
free?
continue. Exactly. The
And these are
contract
things,
expires in June next
yeah,
year, and the contract says the government, the company is supposed to give the bridge free, of course, for $0 to, but we buying it a year in advance just to give the friends and family. But continue though.
But before I stop, I would just not to stop ideally, because she's bringing up something that how we need to communicate this is, who are we buying this bridge from? Who is getting this money? Who are we buying it from? Which means if you're buying it from, you're paying somebody this money. So that's where we need. They need to say who is getting it. Who we need to be deep diving into who is getting this money. Sorry about
definitely,
that. Ideally,
that's
ideally.
okay. These are information, David, that are not, they may be available to the public, yes, but these are information that the public are not aware of. So I'm literally still trying to do the math in my head, and correct me if I'm wrong. You were saying this bridge was built for approximately 40 million US dollars.
40 million US dollars.
And then we're
That's the
trying to
cost.
buy it approximately 20 years later for 30 million US dollars.
Yes, 6 billion,
So the
yes.
bridge would have appreciated in value because it's not going down. So
Yeah,
even if we're trying to buy it, why are we buying it at $30 million when we could put another 10 million and buy another and build another one? So
exactly.
it doesn't make sense. Or better yet, wait for it to expire
And take it
and
over
get it for
free.
free.
That's right.
Because and these are information that we need to put to the public and ask the ordinary man can see where this is incorrect and inaccurate. The ordinary man. You don't need a university degree to understand that this is some, according to what former Minister Lawrence would have said, something fishy. And it's right. We need to see who they're buying it from, and the who will answer why they're buying it in the first place. It's a business deal. It's not for the sake of the Guyanese people, and they're only doing that because the money is not coming out of their pockets. But the day that
Exactly.
some of these persons are taken to court and they're made to pay back these monies to taxpayers, that's when these level of corruption will stop. Until then, I don't know what's going to stop it, but these are information that we, as the Alliance of Change, need to put out there, take it around the place to the ordinary man, to everybody, because at this point that is ridiculous.
Yes, I did. And here's another interesting fact that I want Barbicians to know. And these are all, as I said, how anyone could I have a correspondence. In 2018, the Berbice Bridge came to us to government again and said, oh, they had no money. They wanted to buy a piece of land so that they could start. I'm talking about, this is now 15 years after they own the bridge. They want to start doing some fabricating the buoys and those things like that. And they needed $148 million. So they came to us in the ministry and they said, we don't have this money. Can you give it to us? And I, as minister through the Ministry of Finance, said yes. Of course, we're giving you the money, but here's what we want in return. All minibuses, and I think the route that travels from Rosenthal to New Hampton, the 56 minibuses, we're giving it to you, and what you should do, you discount the minibuses that traveling to discount their toll off of the money we're gonna advance. We're not giving it to you, we're advancing you this 148 million Guyana dollars as advance payment to the minibuses. With the idea that it will lower the cost for the Barbicians and those things. Yeah, you know, they refused. They refused to accept it, and I have it in writing. They refused to accept it, and this is the same persons now that we're gonna empower again. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk about this more as time comes, and we'll present all the facts. But let us move on. Unless any, I want to put Delhi on the spot once again because 58% of our electorate, of our citizens, are under the age of 45. So myself and Vince would consider ourselves, well, I consider myself in the autumn of my years. Vince, you might be in the winter, right? So, but Adele, as a young person coming up, you know, I mean, we hear so much about Guyana being the little Dubai, and this is the fastest growing economy in the world. But yet, the other day I met a set of youngsters, and I was surprised to learn that most of them still, if given the opportunity, would still leave Guyana in a flash. And it's strange to hear that you are the fastest growing economy in the world, and the persons who should benefit more, inherit more because that are the youth, are seriously contemplating leaving Guyana. So, from a youth perspective, Delhi, how do you see us as a country here, now, and in the future? And what would you like to see?
That's a great question. So I have some friends, university graduates, that are nothing is wrong with the occupation, but I'm going to say that are working cab, taxi, not because they want to, but because they're unable as university graduates to attain a proper paying job. So that is to say, you ask someone like that, immediately they're going to tell you they prefer to leave. Why do they work taxi? Immediately, corruption. We can't get a job for a lot of reasons. One, we don't know someone in the government, or even if we go to the private sector is controlled by business people that are connected to the government, or they're being underpaid. The wages being proposed are ridiculous for a graduate. Outside of graduates, there are C-sex students who can't find a job. So living in Guyana is very hard. If you can't find a job, then how are you sustaining your family when everything in the market is going up? I can't go to the market with $20,000 to pack my daughter's lunch kit when the week comes $20,000. Right? So everything is going up, everything is skyrocketing. We are not accustomed to the younger generation. We don't know what it's like to live in this corruption. We don't know what it's like. When I was younger, I couldn't understand what my parents were living in. So when you get old and you're an adult now, it's hard for you to navigate. It's hard for you to survive, knowing that you just can't walk into a government place and get through with a normal service because you don't know somebody. And those are things that we prefer to migrate and put our talent and our education towards another country and earn honestly and earn based on our educational background and based on what we're putting in, as opposed to staying here and you're being victimized based on the color of your skin, the party you support, where you were born and raised, and all of those things. And those are some of the things that are facing us young people. You can literally do a survey. Half of the university graduates here either migrate or they own a business that does not cater to the government. It just relies wholly and solely on the private sector, right? Or they're doing something that was not their career path. It's completely out of that. And it's because of the barriers that we are meeting under this particular government. And then when you say this, you're going to say, oh, well, we have this in place and we have that in place and we have that in place. Oh, fine. But who are the people that are benefiting from all of those things in place? When you look this direction, you look to your right, is this minister's son. You look to your left, is a minister husband or a minister's wife. So it is not fair. It's not a level playing field for us. You understand? In order for you to do business, you have to either do it under somebody else's name because you're affiliated with a different party or something like that, when really and truly the money the government is spending all of our monies. So that's why you're getting that sentiment, David, and you're always going to get it if the level of corruption in Guyana remains the same. I see we increase in the corruption index by 1, and this government is praising it. Like, yes, but I'm waiting for next year to see how far down we're going to go with the level of corruption that we're exposed within the last 2 months of this year. 2 months, we're not even full 2 months in 2026. And the amount of corruption that we have seen being exposed is crazy.
Yes, Vince, why would you
Here,
think, yeah, as someone that would have migrated in your youth, right? Versus the opportunities that are available now that, well, we would see it, I mean, us older persons, because we compare the opportunities when we were growing up to now, because and then we had the opportunity of working outside. So what's your thoughts on that?
here it's so nice hearing the facts as to the reality of life in Guyana coming from the youthful folks such as Adielo. Because again, it's difficult to beat back this propaganda machine from the current government. We hear every day that we're the fastest growing economy, etc. But what Adielo said, for example, a friend of mine who's lives in the United States, a Guyanese, said that he went back to Guyana after about 5 years, and he went to the market and was shocked. He was shocked that he talked about just a few boro for over $1,000, and he is stunned as to how could ordinary people, that 58%.
I heard
In
that quite
addition,
often.
in addition to that 58% is up to just months ago, David, on our program, we talked about a report that came in. I think it was from UNICEF. It came out from UNICEF that Guyana has the highest malnutrition rate in the region, lower than even Haiti. We had the highest malnutrition rate. But anyway, so in terms of people migrating, it's a burning shame. Guyana, Guyana has less than 1 million people. Let me say whatever the numbers they want, even if it's 800,000. That's a little medium sized, not even medium sized city in the U.S. So with all of these resources, everybody in Guyana should be rich. Education, for example, Ariel brought up something that is very important. Rather than sending people, to people go to UG, now they've made it free. And by the way, that's another issue in terms of them propagandizing that somehow they've created free education. We know that that's not true. But anyway, people go to UG. UG should be regarded like a pipeline. When you get out to UG, you know exactly the government should be arranging as to where you're going to be going. All of these companies that are now coming in and investing, there should be agreements with them that you have to look to hire people from Guyana first, unless you can't find qualified people. And that is not something that is far. That's what we do in the United States, Adiola and David. The US government, there's a law. You cannot go and hire people outside of the country as long as you can find people who qualified within the country. That's in the United States. But guess what? Again, guess who these business people who are having these businesses making all of the money, and they really don't care if you do not belong to their clique or to be to part of that friends and families and favorites of the government. You're left out in the cold. So guess what? You have no alternative but to try to get out. And what's interesting, it's probably not no longer part of a race thing anymore, or not even part of the political thing anymore, because it's the divisiveness now is between the rich and the poor. The poor people have no alternative but to leave, because the only people who are benefiting from this economy is that 1% or so who are building the mansions. You have ministers. You have ministers in the
Yep,
government. A certain minister that said that people should be living in truly houses that is
yep.
now being exposed that have all kinds of mansions. That's what we're dealing with.
Within 5 years, you know what I mean? You made a very good point, which I think a lot of people don't know. Local content.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, all these foreign companies, I know for sure. I mean, and we're not being xenophobic. Just the realities are there are dozens, hundreds, and dozens of trucks on the road. And last weekend, I took a drive out to. I went as far as St. Cuthbert's Mission, and the truck drivers are Chinese.
Yep.
Chinese nationals are truck driving. The Indian company brought in 2,000 Bangladeshis truck drivers, and they claimed that they can't find a truck driver in Guyana. Now,
Yep.
that is a low-hanging fruit for our and they're paying these guys, you know, what I mean, $100 a day as a truck driver, $150 a day. These foreigners, plus putting them up
Yep.
accommodation and meals and those things like that. That's a low-hanging fruit. They can go to Region 5, go to Region 6, take all the youngsters, you know what I mean, put them through a 3 or 6 months driving course, and then say to all these companies, here, listen to me. Soon as my man graduates, you send back one of these Bangladeshis, you send back one of these Chinese employees.
That's exactly correct.
Must hire these guys from Region 5 and Region 6. But they don't do that. They just simply allow them to come in and then say then they allow a narrative to persist that Guyanese are lazy.
Yep.
That's why
Yep.
they're bringing in and that is not true. This country was built without oil and those things by Guyanese laborers. It's only now that there's oil and there's a lot more money that people are coming together. For the 56 years as a republic and almost 60 years as independent, Guyanese laborers and persons built this country. Some of them by hand. The sugar workers cut and continue cutting cane. We continue reaping rice by hand. But there's a narrative now that they have allowed to spread that the Guyanese people don't want to work, which is wrong. The question is just like Ida said, is the opportunities are not as available as there is. Folks,
It should be in the law, David. It has to
it
be.
should be the law.
It has to be in the law that you cannot hire anybody outside of this country, or you're only allowed to do that if you cannot find somebody who can do that work within the country. Period. Simple.
Yeah, in other countries it is. It's only but obviously, it's a question of who gets a kickback and those things like that. Who are connected to these companies? You know, I mean, there are certain politicians I know that they call them a Chinese Godfather, the Sioux.
But here's the other thing, David. Since you touch on local content, this is related, and of course we spoke about it on our AFC. We brought up all these issues on the AFC press conference. But anyway, as you recall, one of the things that we talked about was Guyanese people working on these FPSOs.
Oh yes,
were eating leftover. They had to wait until everybody had finished eating before they can eat leftovers. Their wages were much lower, were below minimum wages,
and they're treated horribly
compared to everybody else. And the other thing, which is what we do in the US, because a lot of our especially sensitive facilities and stuff are built in poor areas, like Southern Ohio, the Appalachia, where very poor people live. And one thing that we put in the contract is that every 50% of all of the billions of dollars that goes into these contracts have to go to the local community. So these big Exxons of the world, they would say, well, of course, we can't find the expertise. We can't find companies that are qualified to do it. We said, okay, guess what we did? We fixed that by telling them they got to hire them anyway for a 3-year period, and they've got a mentor. We call it the mentor protege program. It's your responsibility. We're going to pay for it. We're going to, we're going to compensate you. You got to hire them for 3 years, and within that 3-year period, they become now qualified to compete for any contract. So you just can't walk away because that's what they want to do. It's to say, you guys don't have anybody. So we give them 3 years. And within 3 years now, they're ready to compete. So they can't have any excuses after 3 years to be ready to compete. And then they've got to hire them in preference to these companies. Guyanese are not, let me tell you something. Because oil is only going to last for the next 20 to 30 years, trust me. So this time is going to fly out real fast. And so that's what we're dealing with
We
here.
have to build
And
for the
I see
future.
no light at the end of the tunnel, to be honest. And we going down here. But again, it comes down to the friends and families and favorites. That's all they focus
Very
on,
true.
not the regular population.
Ideally, and Vince, we're our time is flying. Ideally, closing words to give everybody a minute to wrap up. Closing thoughts.
My closing thoughts, I hope it doesn't go for a minute. I heard Vince said that the persons are affected by our economy, they will leave, but I disagree. They would leave if they could leave. I remember growing up as a child on a spot in area that had this guy used to come and clean the drains, because we used to live between two drains, two big trench. And every time he came, about 3 times he came and he cleaned it. I never understood why he cleaned it how he did. He would clean from one end and he would stop in the middle, and then he would take a big stick and hit the water, and then he would clean from the other end and came from the opposite end. And I watched him do it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. And I asked him why. I was just about 8 or 9 at that time. And he said that that trench is not his home, is not his territory. There are things that live there. So if he cleans from one end all the way to the next end, he's going to force whatever is in the water to retaliate, because there will be nowhere for those things to go. And I am wondering if these people that make up the friends and the family and the favorites, if they're not afraid, because after 1 time the next, when poor people can't feed their family, when they can't eat, they can't run either, because there's nowhere to go, they don't have money to go, then they're going to become the oppressed people. And after a time, those oppressed persons, they're going to burst. And it's going to leave us Guyanese in a bad state. And we would have seen this in a lot of country. Recently, I think in Nepal, these things lead to civil unrest in the country. And who are going to leave to fix it? The young people now. We're going to have to fix the damages that they're creating. So it's only a matter of time that people get tired and there's nothing that they can do. Absolutely nothing. And I remember that story. Now that I'm older, I never understand. Even when he explained it to me, the significance of what are you telling me? It doesn't make sense. But now I understand why he did what he did. And now I understand to put in the context of a country. So that's my closing words to everybody. That after, there's only so much that people can take at a time. So I hope that in the future, the level of corruption within Guyana reduce significantly. And I hope that persons open their eyes and they vote for the betterment of the next generation and not for selfish reasons.
Thank you. Very, very profound word. Vince, closing minutes.
Yeah, quickly. What Adiola said is I agree with her. But if you notice, the strategy is to control the military and the police. If you notice, that's what this government strategy, because they've seen exactly what Adiola is talking about. So to keep that oppression and to keep it down. But I want to bring to focus attention, because this here is big news, a big splash headlines. ExxonMobil is donating $10 million to the STEM program, and everybody jumping up excited. But let me tell you, folks, that money is our money. First of all, we paid in 2024, we meaning Guyana, 1.236 billion US dollars for Exxon taxes. Exxon doesn't pay taxes besides the small amount of money that we're getting in profit that they don't want to renegotiate. So this money is nothing. It's again, it's to distract and to try to win the people's favor and to distract over the atrocities that they're committing again, that we have talked about over and over, environmental, etc. And that $10 million, that they're paying, even if forget about the taxes, that is 1 day of Exxon's profit, not the revenue. That is 1 day, 1 day. of Exxon's profit that they're currently making. So don't be blindsided and be hoodwinked into this. We need to keep pushing that Exxon needs to give us a better deal. It's our oil, and we deserve a better benefit.
Thank you very much, Vince. Adeli, thank you very much. Very lively program. Thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen,
You're welcome.
we'd like to thank you for being with us this evening, and we'll see you again shortly. Good evening and have a good
Good.
day, folks.
Good
Thank you very
evening.
much.